What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, loan officers, real estate agents, interested public, policymakers, you know, everybody, regulators? Welcome to the Fed Day, almost live, or after Fed Day, definitely live. Show with myself, Sean Grapevine. I am one of our sales leaders here at U Mortgage, and all around, lay person when it comes to the markets, who is excited to be educated on live TV in front of a live studio audience here with a man who needs no introduction, but usually gets one anyway. He is Rob Pieklo, everybody. I'm just going to spare us. We got plenty of things to talk about. I'm going to spare us the embarrassing intro here and welcome Rob Pieklo, VP of Revenue here at U Mortgage, to the show. Welcome, Robert.
John, thank you so much. And layperson, stop. You've been doing the market update long enough now that you should no longer call yourself a layperson.
I'm Ron Burgundy. I just show up. I just read what's on the teleprompter, and after that, it's like in one ear, out the other. I'm just here. I'm a man of the people.
I think there's no call out to San Diego, but yes. Okay, got it.
Yeah. We all know what San Diego means in Spanish. So, Rob, like I said, plenty of things to talk about. Were you able to sleep last night?
No. It was I did a market minute update for our team members today, and I started with whoa. And that was it. That was the message. It was definitely and we'll get into it, but I didn't see the 10-year blowing through for that quickly or that easily. And there another Ron Burgundy reference of that escalated quickly. So holy cow, it was a lot. It was a lot of movement, a lot of move in the markets, a lot of shifting of coupon. There was a lot happening based on just a little chat with Jerome.
Yeah, so let's go way back in time, even before the chat with Jerome, to 30 minutes before that, when the Fed, did nothing, and sparked the biggest, one of the biggest movements in price I've seen, at least in the right direction, since COVID. So before Jerome had the chance to speak, the dot plot came out. What compared to what people thought it was going to be, what did we see to elicit such a big? Well, maybe we should take a step back here. We're getting this is too like in the weeds. And if I want people to believe me about my layperson moniker I've given myself, then let's take a big step back. So, big picture. Let's look at the narrative of what's happened over the last 18 months to the Fed funds rate, but also like how that's affected mortgage rates. And then what the question was, and like how it being answered yesterday has been answered over the last few weeks, like how that has changed things. Tell us the big picture story.
I think the big picture, and Matt Graham mentioned it in his post today, this afternoon. It was a pivot. The big part of this was like, when were we going to pivot and go from this increasing rates, inflationary environment? How are we going to, curb this? And when are we going to flip the switch and start our progression potentially down? And, all along the markets have priced a little bit of that happening. It's going to happen, it's going to happen. And then yesterday was a culmination of that and basically like a validation of it. And we got validation from Jerome that's going to happen. But to be honest, like if you watch the presser, if you see the Fed minutes and kind of the decision and what they posted, their statement, it just wasn't like, it's kind of what we thought was going to happen. We thought there was going to be additional cuts, and potentially the cuts could come a little sooner. And I know the market had priced that out. If you look at the kind of futures and what was being indicated of what cuts were coming, and maybe the Fed shifted their dot plot up, one extra cut and maybe a little sooner, and that's it. And that was enough to drive the market. So I was surprised to see not the move, the velocity of the move, considering that we've come a long way already. I mean, it was just five weeks ago we were sitting at 501 on the 10-year.
I remember. I know. It was a horrible couple of weeks. And so for everybody out there, what is the dot plot?
It's just the progression of where they're going to potentially move and make adjustments to rates, what their forecast is for rate cuts or where the primary rate's going to be.
And
So right
who's they in this particular?
the Fed and how they set their monetary policy of
Policymakers.
short-term rates. Yeah. Well, the Fed, the Fed Reserve is separate from policymakers. Yeah. So they're the monetary policymakers, we'll say. So they're making a decision on short-term interest rates, which don't look at your social media today because everyone's saying, Jerome is going to lower your mortgage rate. It's not necessarily how it works. Just talking about lowering short-term rates really affected the long-term rates. That's what happened yesterday. And what's been happening over the last, 30 days or so of this move down that we've seen since we crested near the top or near the peak of that 5% on the 10-year. So the Fed is, in charge of short-term monetary policy. They have some mandates in terms of employment and in terms of inflation, what they're targeting. And that's what they're kind of keeping in, and why this was a big move. And I'll give you kind of like a little bit of the sentiment of it. In general, when there's obviously we have a pivot here of a change in policy, but like in general, you have some data points that came out. Like they had not a huge, but a pretty big retail sales beat. And I described it as like going over like a small log or a twig going 60 miles an hour on the highway. Like it barely stopped us. And we're staring at a 10-year at 392 right now. We've just blown through that, and we saw like a little hiccup this morning at 8:30. But this shows that really the markets are saying that this is a change, and even more so of a change than what they thought prior to the dot plot, and then also the presser that happened at 2:30.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll talk about the presser here in a second, but tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean by there was a retail sales beat? What does that mean?
So we had some data came out today, and we monitor retail sales. And there's just a data point that the Fed looks at, and what basically of economic growth, and if there's a growth cycle, is potentially more inflation, and the Fed wants to curb that right now. And we saw retail sales, which you would think the forecast was going to be negative 1/10, and it came out as a positive 0.3 or 0.3. So we saw that beat. So a 0.4 beat.
Retail sales, like people bought more stuff in November,
correct,
than they did the month before, and than anybody expected.
Yeah, and you would not expect it's total consumer purchases from retail stores, and like you would expect it to be going down, being a contraction. You would expect that. Seasonality obviously is already in play, so talk about like Christmas, but like here we're looking at this and we expected to see that lower by 1/10 and to have that beat. In normal circumstances, this is like a normal day. We probably would see mortgage rates, down, maybe 15, 20 basis points or something today for the data that came out. You'd be like, oh, wait a second. Like, there's potentially some growth numbers, but like unfazed. We were unfazed. The markets were unfazed. Traders were unfazed, and we just blew right through that data point. And even continuing claims with being or jobless claims being a little bit better than anticipated, which is bad for bonds. We didn't care. Everybody just went right through it. And here we are.
So let's take where the market is. Well, all right. Before we do that, so what did Jerome say? Jerome, we both talk about him. He's become a household name. It's like Santa.
Yeah.
Like
that's our nickname. We just call him Jerome. Oh, Jerome. Yeah. That's what we do.
J Powell and his money printer, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So what did he say at 2:30 that like, I mean, because originally, like when the dot plot came out, rates moved a little bit in the right direction. I think the 10-year was at like 4.08. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. This is a good, it was the beginning of the daily sales huddle here at UMortgage. And I was just like, man, that's so great. I hope that's just where it stays. And that when Jerome talks, he doesn't make it worse. And then I got done and it was getting better and better. So what did he say to make people so ebullient?
Yeah, it really wasn't that much. I mean, I looked at it as like, no, I know, but it's kind of what we thought. It's kind of, he just confirmed. I guess the confirmation was something they needed. Was he going to come out and be, incredibly hawkish? No, maybe it's a little more dovish in sentiment and how he was talking. So more favorable to rates decreasing. So, we thought that was it. And really he just validated what the markets have been talking about for some time, that, okay, we're going to pause here. We're going to look. Is there potential to increase? Okay, but we think we've hit the high end of this particular cycle. And that was enough. That was enough. And it's more about the validation of it. So we had a significant move. Then we had the validation of that. And we saw that move. And in the mortgage world, obviously these are short-term rates. So in the mortgage world, they're just saying like, okay, like the economy is going to slow. Long end of the interest rates here are going to come down. Because they've obviously been elevated for quite some time and had a real big push up in September and October. So, this is just sentiment that longer term, rates are coming down. The long term rates have come down, and we've seen a significant change in longer term rates, like in terms of like what it's done to the mortgage rate market. I mean, we've seen 100 basis point to rate move, over the last few weeks, and I would say like almost 75 basis points in rate move just in the last day and a half.
Yeah, it's been pretty insane. So yeah, let's take a look at where we are holistically on the chart, right? So right now, as I'm speaking, the 10 years at 3.926. And I never thought I'd be celebrating that. First of all, I mean, it's not,
It's all relative. It's
yeah,
way better on the way down than on the way up.
I woke up like it was Christmas morning, and if you would have told me a year ago that that would be the case, I wouldn't have believed you. So, but where does that put us in the sort of context of the last? Let's go back to 2019. So when like we had a healthy market, right? Like rates were increasing then. As I remember, I was originating loans in the 4, maybe 4.5% range. Every once in a while I would kiss 5. And in the Atlanta, where I'm from, the Atlanta real estate market was humming along. Loan officers, were not. It was not and real estate agents and buyers, even with the rising rates, it just wasn't really like something that we talked about. It was a healthy market. So I don't know what the 10-year was then. Probably
It was
two.
in the twos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the twos, and that's where we were. Obviously, there was still that spread, when it comes to the 10-year versus where mortgages were trading, or the primary mortgage rate. We're seeing that. That did widen a little bit over the last few years. But in terms of that, the 10-year has been low for quite some time. So if you look at the chart and where things are, we're kind of back to where we were in July of 22.
Oh
That's
wow.
or should say that the peak of July. So call it yeah, I would say in July, August of 22, and that 10 years dropped to near that level. So that's a pretty significant change. Seeing this down, obviously, I'm prior my chart was sitting at 4.25 or so is what I was looking at. So I'm looking at the line across, and it's way back into July. So yeah, that move is there, and we had that move up, but really like our peak of rates, it didn't last that long. So this like real bad move that we had recently, like that didn't. It was only a couple month span where we had
I
this kind
felt
of
it felt,
peak.
like a lifetime there, sir.
It felt like an eternity. It was just a moment ago that we were at this rate, but it's again on the way down. It just feels so much better than on the way up. On the way down, when we feel like there's been a shift in sentiment, and that's it. But I will say, in terms of like, we always have to correlate this to the mortgage market. And we do want to I don't know how to phrase this, but it's not pity. I feel for the secondary and capital markets guys at all the mortgage companies, because while we celebrate rates moving down, we talk about it all the time. It's the velocity of these
Mhm.
moves that are tough. And like, how do you equate it to, is like, you'd probably want this to be more of a advent calendar type gift, a little bit each day, versus Santa throwing the whole
All the
sack of presents and hit you in the face with it. So like, this was it's a huge move, and it's just hard to, like, if you look at a 5-day chart and see the significant move, it's really hard to hedge and have an understanding of like, especially with the way liquidity is and coupons and all this funky stuff that happens in the market. It's really hard to like deal with moves like this. The velocity is it's so tough on them. So we're going to tip our cap to those that are doing a good job, and are probably, they didn't sleep for sure. But when you're hedging and trying to deal with pipelines that are active, living, and breathing, and there's opportunities to go to another lender, and you might lose and have big fallout, or you have to deal with renegotiations or float downs. All of these things are very, very difficult on the secondary desk. So if you're watching and you're in that business, thank those guys for all of what they do and the pricing that they put out for you, because it is not an easy game.
Wow, spare a thought for our friends in secondary. I know your average loan officer is like, yeah, I will spare a thought as I'm moving this from one lender to another, or hitting them up for rate renegotiation policies, and wondering about EPOs themselves. So let's talk about that from the loan officer's point of view. What is like, you've talked about the risk to the capital markets teams at various lenders, and There's obviously benefits to like I think all of that will be outweighed by the fact that like we should see an uptick in production from loan officers, at lenders. Everybody should win when housing affordability gets better. Um, for the loan officer, EPOs. I mean, are we in concern about that territory?
Not, yeah, I mean, yes, there's always a concern of recent production, going, but since that window was small and apps were down in terms of like the like holistic look at it, like it's not that bad, right? So there's going to be opportunities, going to be people going to be refinanced. There's going to be some EPOs, but in terms of the scale, like luckily that peak moment it was short lived, even though it felt long to us, like we said, but it's been short lived there. And I think for this is where we were with rates in the summer is kind of where we are, or maybe it's a little bit better now, but not enough to spur significant amounts of refinance equity of that cohort of loans. So like we'll see what that looks like. Obviously, if we trend down a little bit more and that next coupon pops open, because remember we were looking at the 6.5 as the basic production coupon in UMBS, and everybody was using that as their benchmark, and we've shifted down to 5.5, and we'll probably shift down again.
Yeah, interesting. So who makes that? Is it just like how does that decision get made?
No, it's not really a decision. It's just kind of what tracks where the most liquidity is and where the production is going to be. So you always want to look at what's near par for these coupons, and that's what is usually a determinant. Like whatever is like a little bit higher than par for a particular coupon is what they'll track, and what will end up being the most liquid coupon. And that's what we usually use for our kind of barometer of whether or not something is pricing. Now, you'll see it on rate sheets all the time. I know we've talked about it because people, I'm sure, like watch this every Monday, religiously on our market update. I know this is a Thursday special, but if they've watched before, we've talked about coupon stacks and how things can be different in a coupon stack. And you'll see that not all mortgages just trade in tandem with all rates. Not like 8% pays more now, the same as 6% did. It's not how it works. They move within a rate sheet, and each coupon moves separately from each other in a trading world. So is there a correlation? Yes. But if you look today, like the 5.5 is around 30 basis points better, where the 6.5 is only 13. So it's a
2.5x, 250% difference in movement there.
Correct. And we talked about, previously we've talked a lot about premiums, and basically this validates what we've talked about on a few Mondays, where we're like, investors just don't want to come in and pay a lot for a mortgage bond that might pay off. Well, this move is why. This is the why right now, what we're dealing with in a move like this. This is why in October, there wasn't premium on the higher end. Oh, why can't we just go higher in rate and get the same pricing I got, when rates were lower? Well, it just doesn't work that way. You need investors to want to pay a premium to get that loan and that coupon. This is the reason they don't want to pay the premium, is that there's an opportunity for that tranche of loans to have a much faster prepayment speed than what a normal production would normally be.
That, what, I judged him for it, but they were right. You guys were right. It was very, very annoying thing for you to have been right about, because there was a long period of time where there wasn't much premium. Now, that being said, I think we can kind of have a conversation about trending, like what we expect trend wise. Is this the beginning of a trend? Should we expect this I mean, obviously, if you knew, I assume if you knew which direction rates were going to go and how quickly, you wouldn't be you'd be dialing in from your space yacht.
That's on my list of things to talk about, was make fun of the fact that I'm talking to you on a Thursday afternoon and talking about the markets like I know what I'm talking about. No, what you can only do is get the information and make an educated guess. Is my educated guess better than maybe someone who doesn't know anything about the markets? Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm wrong 100% of the time, so you definitely have me beat. So
yeah, it's kind of like a meteorologist of some sort, where you just kind of keep talking about. Eventually, I'll be right. But but this looks like the trend is in. Do I think it's moved, aggressively? Maybe too much. Yeah, like I feel like it's a shift and kind of got us to where we were, and then some. So I'll be interested to see what occurs over the next few weeks as we kind of go into the holiday season. I lost my train of thought before when I was talking about this is for originators and for companies and everything. This is actually a good time for this to actually occur. So when you have a move like this, at least the one positive side of and the silver lining is obviously more loans. But in terms of how to manage through this, is that it's in the holiday season where in general our pipelines are a little bit lower. Just because but this might spur some more activity, get more stuff coming in, and less loans, that were in the pipeline to start, at least. Like people were waiting till January, February to kind of get that search going and purchase a home, and now potentially refinance. Like there's going to be more loans happening now than normally would have been, and luckily the pipelines were probably smaller based on all the data that we've seen in terms of apps and locks. So it isn't as painful of a move as if this was in April. It would be a disaster. Like it'd be very tough to manage a move of this velocity if we were in peak purchase season.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I 100% agree. As far as like with the now, if like you're right, if this is a trend and investors see like, hey, rates are going to continue to keep declining, why should I invest in mortgage loans now if they have a high probability of paying? Like, are we still going to have the same premium issue? And for people who are like who maybe aren't as well versed in some of this stuff. When we talk about premium, we talk about the fact that like, hey, when we do a loan, we get a certain amount of revenue as a company. Our loan officer gets a certain amount of commission, and there's a varying levels of that. And one of the issues that we've had over the last 12 months or so is that not only have the rates been high, it's the loans haven't like been very profitable. I mean, just make it as simple as possible. And so we used to be able to, oh, you could just go up in rate and it would pay more money. That's how it works. But like in a lot of cases, you would go up in rate, you would pay less money. I mean, it was like absolutely insane for a while now, and it was because the people who pay for those loans, investors, knew that these loans would eventually get refinanced, so they didn't want to pay very much. The
Yeah,
question
there's a
is,
reluctance for that.
do we still have that problem if the current thought is, hey, I think these loans are going to get paid off, like rates are going to get down, and we're going to have an we're going to have refinances.
So we're in much better position now than we were just a month ago. So I'll say that. So is there going to be the kind of back to the old school 106, 107 for loans? No, like that world is not here. There isn't a static buyer of MBS like the Fed. There isn't a ton. We've seen a lot of articles about the lack of foreign buyers, especially in the Ginnie market. Like you're not going to see the robust premiums on standard production and TBA pricing here. You're just not going to see it. So, maybe it ticks up and we have a little bit more. And certainly in the spec trading game, which is the world in which loans that have a less propensity to prepay. So you would have some, maybe smaller loan balances or a particular state that has a mortgage tax or something that makes some hurdles to be able to refinance. Those premiums will be up. There'll be significant premiums for those loans. But outside of that, like the standard production, there's just not going to be a ton of premium out there. There'll be more. I would say probably, you might see that 103 handle comfortably on products versus the 102 and 101.5 is where we were maxing out before. We may see a little bit more premium. And outside of that, we have to just pay attention to buyers coming in. And I think where that floor in rates are going to be. This isn't a move where we're going to get back to that like 2% coupon being the production coupon. That's not going to happen again, barring something that we don't even talk about. so that's not going to happen naturally, we'll say. So I would anticipate that buyers would be a little more comfortable in this space. And when rates do come down, and when the short-term rates do come down, then things become more attractive in terms of what kind of yield they're getting on investments as well. So you'll start to see maybe a little more competition for that product. And there's less product of it, to be honest. Like if you look at where the number of total production in mortgages, it's less. So until we get lower and have a huge refinance opportunity, which like I said, we're limited based on the amount of loans that have actually closed over the last 2 years that could potentially be refied if rates tick down again. But like in general, you'll see this market here and this premium here. People are going to be comfortable with paying at least a little bit more for those loans.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So, I mean, that's good news for loan officers. Good news for, when it comes down to it, premium on mortgages really goes to affordability for like first-time home buyers. I mean, in a lot of cases, one of the hardest things to do over the last 12 months for a lot of loan officers was when there's lack of premium. Not only does the person have to pay the 3% or the 3.5% down, or in some cases, if you go to a mortgage loan officer, 1% or even 0% down. But, and then there was actually a cost to the loan in terms of discount points because there wasn't enough premium. And so it was actually like, you're somebody buying their second or third house using equity from the house they were selling or with big savings, like didn't affect them. They had to pay an extra point or two in like It's real. It's a real cost. But like, I'm sure across the industry. I mean, I saw it up close and personal. It was actually affecting affordability. It's just the cost of the loan, just the points. To say nothing of the insane principal and interest payments.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll see. Like I think that's the sweet spot we're going to fall into, a right enough premium along with MSR values that we can start to see some of those products come back and having that par. I mean, we run a much lower margin shop at UMortgage, but in general, like the market itself and some of the larger the higher margin retail lenders as well, like you're going to get into a spot where there's more premium to be had to cover those products and have your margin for the company. So that'll get there, like I said, but just the world of the lowest coupon paying a significant amount just it's not coming back. But we should get to a spot where we're comfortable with that. Now those DPA programs and there is a story to tell. So maybe there's a spec world that opens up around that because a lot of those things are captive or at least have a second on it that prevents a standard refinance without being repaid. So there's certainly some opportunity to gain some more premium in the markets, and I'm sure the guys will figure it out. But in terms of the mortgage world and the people this is a good thing. It's a good time, and it's definitely going to open up the opportunities come January, February, and March for people who get in early. I put a post on Facebook, just opinion poll, like, is it a good time to buy now? And I got some interesting, people saying like, well, no, just wait because rates are going down. It's like, what do you think is going to happen to the demand?
Yeah.
Now we're here.
So let's take the last few minutes we have here to open the floor to some questions that we have from the audience. I know we've got this on LinkedIn. We've got it internally at UMortgage and a few other places. So Jake says, what do these updates mean for realtors and their businesses?
Oh, that's a good one. So what does it mean for realtors? Hey, let's get people off the fence. Like right now is a really good time where people are normally getting prepped for holidays and not thinking about this. Like, oh, I'm going to restart my search in January, February when I'm ready to go in 2024. I think it gives a little bit of like a cattle prod to our potential buyers out there to hop off the fence and let's go. And here is a call to action to kind of go back to the folks that said they're going to wait for rates to come down or going to wait to next year when they think rates are going to come down. Like mortgage rates have moved. The Fed kept rates static, but mortgage rates have moved. Now is a really good time to get in before CNBC picks it up. Everybody starts talking about rates are lower, and that drives more buyers in. So that's something for our agents to do as a call to action.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the rates going down doesn't do anybody any good if the prices respond in a proportional manner. So you got to get ahead of it and get in the market before everybody decides to, right? Like December's time to do it. And so I think for agents, it's like push your clients to be like, hey, this is the time. It's not going to get any better. If it gets better, prices are going to get worse. So any other questions out there? Oh, whoa. Todd Bitter. He says, it sure feels like we're finally turning the right corner. 2023 was a year to learn from our wins and failures. I love it. Okay. I was like, yeah, Todd is our chief sales officer here at UMortgage. So he's just, and this is why he is the chief sales officer. He is just any channel opportunity to get pumped up. And he's right. 2023 was a year to learn from our wins and failures. I mean, you saw how many banks shut down, how many lenders shut down, how many loan officers left the business. Like this is the time to lick our wounds. I think we all got skinnier, maybe not physically, but our P&Ls got skinny, our costs got skinnier, and now it's time to take that new like leanness to bear. I think for agents, I'm sure the same is true for agents as it was for loan officers. Like it was definitely time. Like we shed costs. We decided we landed on what was actually important, what was actually affecting our business. 2020 and 2021, it was really difficult to figure out why we were successful. Turns out, it had nothing to do with any of our skill sets. You could just walk down the street and get deals. But it's been a great year to learn what works and what doesn't, and I'm excited to bring that forward into 2024.
Yeah, I think affordability is a big deal to talk about. I think that's important that if we start thinking about what this does to afford, but how much more house someone can afford. We have conforming loan limits went up. We had, housing. It's been a really good story. It's always been better to buy yesterday, for the last 15 years now. And that continues. So like we should be talking about buying today. It's always like, oh, I should have bought. I should have. Oh, I should have. How many times have we talked about I should have bought that short house down in Florida. It's not a shore house, a beach house, I should say, in Florida. But like you didn't, and now we're looking at a spot where that obviously made a lot of sense. And there's been a lot of people talking about housing, the crash, it's imminent. Boy, that's getting old. We've been talking about it for quite some time, and there's some things that you have access to, and you can look up. It's very hard to have a big housing crash without delinquencies, and like this amount of loans and the stuff that's been securitized and the stuff that's been guaranteed by the government, which is a significant portion. I think it's 85 or 90% of the loans have some semblance of or shape or form of a government backing or insurance. Boy, the data is really good still. And until we start to see that change, housing is going to go and it's going to continue. And there's obviously inventory discussions and issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis. This is going to bring some more buyers to the market. And maybe if we go down a level, it'll help a little bit with inventory. But that's something that we have to pay attention to. Is these moves are big from an affordability standpoint. On a $500,000 loan, I don't know, $400 or $500 difference in payment, over the last 5 weeks. I mean, that's an incredible amount, and it doesn't have to go straight to the payment being less. It could just be buying a bigger house. That's an opportunity. So that's stuff that we have
There
to
you go.
talk about.
Now you're thinking. You heard it here first, folks. Just get the bigger one. You'll grow into it. Any other questions from out there in TV land?
And a big one, and I'll jump in between while we wait. But like a big one too is for realtors posting and obviously be very cautious on what you're posting on social media. I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but boy, keep the rate posts to the mortgage professionals. We have a lot of disclaimers we have to do, and you can get in trouble. So try not to do that. But it is good to talk about rates in general, not necessarily like, hey, I can get you 5%. That doesn't work. So just be cautious with that, and just understand that the Fed. Well, it's a good marketing tool to go out and talk. The Fed doesn't move the mortgage rate. Like, that's the key part. So that they stayed static and they'll start to decrease next year. But the mortgage market moves differently. It doesn't go directly with the Fed. It will react to the longer term, and it's gonna react to what the Fed does. So that's why you see occasions where the Fed increases rates and mortgage rates comes down. The Fed kept rates static, mortgage rates came down. So like, we don't have to wait for the Fed to make the changes. The market is dictating what's going to happen to rates. So instead of talking about the Fed isn't going to lower rates till later, that's not the case. Mortgage rates have already started to move.
Yeah, they definitely kind of Fed telegraphs what's going to happen. Mortgage rates move down in expectation of that. Fed confirms, mortgage rates move down to meet it. It's definitely a multi-step process. So it's definitely one of the, I think, confusing things for people. I had like several people that aren't in the industry text me yesterday and be like, hey, I saw these posts about mortgage rates getting better, but the Fed didn't change rates. Why is that? It's like, yeah, because they're just sort of like the numbers aren't aligned. It's just like the vibes are aligned. So it's like that, it's like that's really what matters. The Fed's vibes is like what the mortgage industry picks up on. This is the high level technical analysis you all came here for. We're going to take one more question.
Vibing. We're rate vibing, and I got Andrew Katie with an awesome point. The
Fed, why don't you take this one?
This is what we talked about before. So like the market had a move already done. If you looked at kind of what the Fed Watch tool and what futures looked like on a percentage basis of what's going to move, like that actually shifted with the Fed was planning on 50 basis points or 3 cuts versus 3 cuts versus 2, and they were pricing call it 75 basis points of potential cuts. The market had it at 100 already, and now we've seen that shift even more. So it's just kind of shifted with it. And to be honest, I don't think it matters that much short term. I think since this pivot has happened, who's going to be right? That is right now so far out in terms of in the future.
Yeah, right now it's just vibes. Don't worry about the numbers.
Yeah, it's just Sean's vibes. But yeah, I am erring on the side of where the Fed said they're going to do it. Like that's just what I think, barring any again, unnatural event, some act of war or something that happens. Like hopefully that doesn't happen. So like the Fed hasn't strayed from what they've said they're going to do in quite some time. So they're telegraphing it and they'll make the moves. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by where we end up, but I'm going to err on the side of where the Fed is stating they're going to be versus what the markets are pricing in. And I said it live on LinkedIn. So I can't even take it back. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm going to, hard disagree. I'm going based solely off of, you guessed it, vibes. That's all I'm making my decisions on when it comes to my rate estimate newsletter, which you can pay to be a part of. So uh, someday in the future. So anyway, Rob, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being the analytical yin to my vibey yang. Super super helpful. I can't. We're gonna do this every month. And yeah, like it's hopefully
Every
every
Fed
month.
meeting, I guess. So it's not,
Sorry.
just 8 times a year. That's all.
And yeah, I think it's hopefully every single one of them is exciting as this. I prefer chaos to chaos and entertainment to like uh stability in my life. So this is a really fun 24 hours for me. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to Rob or myself on LinkedIn. We'd love to get those questions answered for you. If it's tactical, strategic, or just like understanding based, we are happy to answer those questions. And we can't wait to see you back here next month. There is one next month in January.
There is one in January. That's right.
All right. See you guys in the new year. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.